Okay. Well, good morning and welcome to our coffee and conversation with Aimee from La Bien Aimée in Paris, France. Aimee, hello, welcome. Oh, got to take Aimee off. Oh, yeah, we muted everybody. Now we got to make Aimee
Sorry
available.
about that. I muted myself because we could hear a little sound and I wanted to talk to my assistant who's here next to me and then I couldn't unmute myself.
I caught you off guard. Hey, thank you for being here for our coffee and conversation. It's 9 a.m. in the middle of the United States. And what time is it there, Aimee?
It is 4 p.m. here in Paris.
Okay, so we're not drinking coffee, we're having coffee here. Knit Paper Scissors is located in Lincoln, Nebraska, and we are a stock list for Aimee's yarns. And just that's been a real pleasure and has become a big part of what we do here. And we are so glad, Aimee, for you to take time to join us today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. You know, I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in Olathe, Kansas. So Lincoln, Nebraska is not that far from where I grew up. My favorite cousin, she lives in Omaha. And so I'm very familiar with Nebraska and Kansas. And so when this invitation came through, I was like, yes, let's do it. So.
Yes, fabulous, fabulous. So, why don't you tell us? I was teaching beginners on Saturday, and you know how we struggle when we begin something. And I said, we all started. We all had to begin at some point learning to knit or crochet. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and how I don't imagine the lady sitting at the table would ever imagine that day they were learning to knit that they might own a yarn store, a yarn company someday. So tell us about your journey, Aimee.
Absolutely. I want to say that my fiber journey started when I was a child. I was always very interested in creating things with my hands, and my grandmother taught me cross stitch. I think I was probably 5 or 6 when I learned. I remember making lots of cross stitch ornaments and like little mini, it would just be like little designs of like little animals and things like that. And around the age of 6 or 7, I started to bug my mom and asked her if she would teach me to knit. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and my mom would knit us all sweaters. We all wore a lot of homemade clothing, and handmade sweaters was something like if you looked at all of our photos when we were growing up, we were all wearing something that was hand knit. And I remember my mom saying to me, because she would be busy knitting, and she's like, I don't have time to teach you to knit because she was so busy knitting all these sweaters for all 5 of us. But she knew that I could use a needle really well. And so she taught me how to do mattress stitch and had me seam the sweaters that she was knitting. So she would always knit us this kind of the same recipe of a sweater with the front and the back and the sleeves. And so the seaming up the side was really easy. And it was usually a DK Aran weight yarn. It was fairly easy. I think I was about the age 7. I started doing that and I really enjoyed it because it felt like doing cross stitch. But then after a while I got bored because I was like, all right, now can you teach me to knit? And so after I had done that, to her approval, because she always said to me, you need to do this properly or else your sweater won't look right. And when I was a child, you don't understand that. And what that meant was, how important finishing is. She always taught me how to weave in the ends. She had her methods for weaving the ends. And so that's how I learned it. And then by the time that she was satisfied that I could do that well enough, I think I was 8 years old, she taught me how to knit.
Oh my gosh.
So I've been knitting since I was 8.
And then you ended up in Paris. And I think you had a store there at one point because I had people come and say, well, I'm going to go visit Aimee's store in Paris. And I said, well, I don't think it's there anymore, but you did have a
I
store, right?
did. I
Mm-hmm.
did. So between the age of 8 and I'm 48 now. I grew up and lived half of my life in Kansas. I went to elementary school, junior high, high school, university in Kansas. Graduated from the University of Kansas with a master's degree in French language and linguistics. And I also had studied French language, so I studied abroad in France. And that was my way of really figuring out that like I actually kind of I want to live in France. I graduated from the University of Kansas. I had gotten a job just to work for the university, and within 1 month of moving to France, I met my husband. And this was in Besançon, France. So I was about 22, I think I was like 21, 22. After that, it was love at first sight, you know. So when people ask me, like, how did you end up in France? I say, well, I followed a boy home. I mean, that's pretty much what happened. We were married by the time I was 23, and we got married in Kansas, and then we moved to France, and this was in 2001, and I've never left since.
Wow.
And
So tell me about the
so
store. How did you?
I'll tell you about the store. I didn't
Yeah.
open the store right away. On my first years of living in France, I tried to figure out what I wanted to do. I taught English, I taught French, I worked in marketing because I had some marketing experience. And doing all those jobs, I wasn't happy. And I was knitting a lot at the time. And it was my way. Knitting had become a way for me to be social and to meet people. I started Paris's first meetup group, the first knitting meetup group on meetup.com. And so I'd have a lot of expats who'd come knit with me. We would meet at Starbucks. And this was back in the time when you could still smoke in the cafes in Paris. And I mean, I remember coming home and being like, oh God, my knitting smells like smoke. We would go to Starbucks because it was like one of the few cafes where they didn't allow you to smoke inside. But still, like, even if you sat outside on the terrace, your knitting would smell like smoke. And so I remember I would tell my husband, I was like, I want to open a cafe where no one's allowed to smoke and we could knit and our knitting won't smell like smoke. And I want to sell all the yarns that I was buying in the United States. So at this time, I would travel home to the US and I would like fill my whole suitcase full of all these hand-dyed yarns that didn't exist in Europe. And I'd go to local yarn shops in Kansas, or I think it was mostly in Kansas that I did all of my shopping for hand-dyed yarns at the time. And I thought, like, this would be so great if I sold these yarns here in Paris. And so that's how the idea to open Paris's first knit cafe, which is called Oisifté. And I did that in 2008.
Neat. And then you moved into yarn dyeing, correct?
That's right. But not right away. Not right away. So I did the yarn shop for about 7 years. Just running the yarn shop in the cafe. And it was a full-fledged restaurant. We served food, we had brunch on the weekends, plus managing a yarn shop at the same time. So it was a lot of hats that I wore at the time. And
were you cooking?
I was doing all the cooking. So these were all my recipes for the cakes and the cookies. I would arrive in the morning. And also during that time, I had 2 kids. So both of my children were born my son Maximilian was 18 months old when I opened my cafe. My daughter, 2 years later, she was born, and they both just grew up in the cafe. After 7 years of doing that, I started to really want to find my own yarn. Oisifté had become quite popular. Claire Parks had written about us in one of her books. I had a really popular expat blog, and people would come from all over the place to come to my cafe. And we had a really popular knit night. And a lot of expats would come to our knit nights. And the number one thing that almost all the knitters would ask for is, where can I get a yarn from Paris? Why can't I find a yarn from France? You know, and because at the time I was selling all these yarns that were easy to find in the United States. And so I thought that's how the idea kind of popped into my head. Like, maybe I could make my own yarn. And I had my own sense of color and my own, as being a yarn shop owner, you have to understand color theory to be able to help your clients shop for colors, for patterns. And I felt very comfortable in that. And so I thought maybe I could actually do this. And so in 2015, that's how Bien Aimée came to be. I rented a very small commercial space about 300 meters from my cafe, and I started dyeing in that commercial space. I never dyed Bien Aimée yarn in my house, in my apartment. My Paris apartment was so tiny, it wouldn't even have been possible at the time. I also had 2 small children. It was not anything that I ever entertained doing. So we started dyeing in a very small commercial space, about 300 meters from the cafe. We would dye yarn. I would bring it over to knit night and put a basket out, and it would just be gone. You know, before even anyone else could buy it, all the knitters from knit night would just buy all the yarn. It happened 1 week, it happened 2 weeks, and then a couple months later, I was like, okay, guys, I need to, I need to put some yarn online, because word had gotten out that we had started making our own yarn. And so then I started putting the yarn online, And then that's how the business grew from there. Word got out, and Bien Aimée just grew and grew and grew to where we are today in 2023. We are still in the same neighborhood where my cafe is, where my cafe was. I had to close my cafe, and eventually I had a brick and mortar shop called Bien Aimée as well. And I needed to close both of them in May 2021. Pandemic happened, and like many things, it was just really hard for me to juggle keeping a shop that had to be closed and opened on a constant basis, also running a dye studio at the same time. So my husband and I decided to focus all of our energy on dyeing yarn and being able to provide yarn through our online shop and our stockists around the world. So that's how now Bien Aimée is sold.
It is. And I have to tell you, we have a number of the lines here at Knit Paper Scissors. And as customers start to work with it, they say, there's something about this yarn. Every yarn I try, something about this yarn. This yarn, there's something different. I really like it. So you can really tell that you have put thought and time into selecting your bases.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you go around to find the bases, or lots of people say, well, do they have the sheep? Do they? And I said, no,
not yet. Not yet. And I don't know if we'll ever go there. Every once in a while, my husband jokes about it, and I look at him, I said, don't even go there. We do have custom spun bases. So starting in 2018, I believe that was the first year I put out my first custom spun base, which was cashmere merino. I was looking for a cashmere merino with a little bit of nylon, so 10% nylon, because I wanted to be able to make hard-wearing garments that were soft, but also knit socks with a very nice high twist. So this was, I'm a sock knitter, so I was thinking about that. And it was starting in 2018 where I started to spin cashmere merino, and then I really put myself towards non-superwash bases starting at the end of 2018, 2019. And since then, I have not put out any superwash bases. And all the bases that I have released since 2019 are custom spun for Bien Aimée. What that means is that I get in touch with mills that I'm interested in, and I tell them like what kinds of fibers that I would like, what kinds of twist, what weight of yarn, and they make the yarn for me to my specs. I dye it to see if it dyes really well. And once we have a good combination and everything's good, I have that base made for me.
Wow. Then that explains why they are so absolutely fabulous. I finished my La Bandana this morning. I won't show my second one. I won't show you that the ends are not woven in. We can wear that. We can wear it with our needle.
Of course we can.
But as I finished the very end this morning, and I was working with the Felix, I'm like, this yarn, there's just something that makes my hands happy about it. So I hear that over and over here at the store. So thank you for taking the time to combine those yarns and work with, instead of just going to a market and buying whatever you are shown. One of the things that we often think about is, let's look at some of our questions. We talked about how and why you started dyeing yarn, and what inspires your color choices. But first, I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite color?
Well, it's easy. It's the color that I'm wearing right now. This is Yellow Brick Road. So it's kind of a greeny yellow. It's what I imagined it was my memory of what the Yellow Brick Road looks like in The Wizard of Oz growing up. So being born in Kansas, watching The Wizard of Oz was like it was the movie that we watched every season, every year as a family. And when I started working in the dye studio to create this yellow, this was my memory of what Yellow Brick Road looked like. And then when I went and actually watched the movie again, I was like, oh, it's actually more like my shop front, which was like LBA yellow, which is like kind of this like really bright yellow. But for me, this was Yellow Brick Road, and this is my favorite color. It's also a wink back to me being from the state of Kansas, and also because the color yellow hasn't always been a color that I grew up loving. As an Asian American, a lot of racial slurs can come out of using the color yellow. And so I was always taught growing up that I should never wear yellow. This is not a color for me. And I really wanted to take back the power of that color by dyeing it. And so now we have so many yellows. Like we literally just released another yellow recently called Sunburst. So you can see that on our online store. But yeah, so yellow is like my happy place. As you can see, I've got my yellow cabinet here. If you came to LBA, we've got yellow walls all over the place. It is just this beautiful color that I feel like that makes everyone smile.
So where then do you get your inspiration for all the other beautiful colors? Kansas for this.
Everywhere. Everywhere. I mean, let me see. So I've got some samples here. Let me see what I can find. My goodness. Yellow Brick Road comes from like The Wizard of Oz, from what growing up. I like to be inspired by place. So that means by traveling. Being Korean American, we have a lot of colorways that are named in Korean. So Namu is one of our lightly speckled colorways, which means tree in Korean. So I imagine like all these tones of trees, like greens and browns that we use as speckles. And so that would be the inspiration for that color. I've definitely been inspired by people that I work with and people that I've met in life. And so we have colors named after people that I've met. So if you see colors like Madeline or Aimée or Hegelia, we also have colors called like Julia. Julia is my assistant who works with me, and she made a color one day during a team building activity that was just really beautiful and exciting. And that's how that color came to be. So yeah, so I'm mostly inspired by like where I grew up, where I travel to, and the people that I meet. There are some pop culture influences as well. I believe I have like 14 or 15 colors after the Game of Thrones series. I'm really inspired by Miyazaki films, Japanese anime. And so we've got several colors based on those films and things like that. So yeah, but mostly I think a lot of the colors that I make come from collaborations as well. I can show you some colors that I have here.
I think that sounds great. Let's have a little show and tell.
This little show and tell here. So this is from a very, very old collaboration that I did. I believe it was 2017 with Vera Valimaki. We made these 3 colors for her because we collaborated with her. She was part of this online event called Knit Stars, and she had sent me this mood board, and she was interested in making a shawl with these 3 colors. And so I'm going to hold them really close so you can see, because this one's really quite complex. It's like yellow and pink with speckles. And then you probably recognize this one. This is like my favorite pink of the moment for the last 2 years, Fluor Morganite. And this beautiful green here called Malachite. So we have Malachite, Fluor Morganite, and Heliodor. And so I created these 3 colors. After the collaboration, they went into the vault for at least 2 years. I didn't bring them back out again. And then I started thinking about pink because I'd been dyeing exclusively yellow and wearing a lot of yellow. But then I was like, I really love pink. Pink is my second favorite color. As you can see, we used it here in the Brienne behind me. And so I brought Fluor Morganite back out of the vault to start dyeing this.
I have Fluor Morganite in here.
I see that. That's awesome. Yeah, so these colors were inspired by a person. So Vera Valimaki, she's a Finnish designer who makes shawls. And the actual color names are based on stones. So Heliodor, Fluor Morganite is a type of quartz stone, and malachite.
Okay, fabulous. Fabulous, fabulous. So Regina, let's pause for a moment, and I know Amy's got some more samples to show us, but do we have any questions that are relevant to what we've been talking about?
Yes, quite a few. So a couple questions. One, Anne Ball, who is one of our fellow employees at Knit Paper Scissors, is wondering what you are wearing today.
Oh, so I am wearing the Traveler Shawl, the Traveler Shell by Andrea Mowry.
Super cute.
Very, very cute. I am very much in love with the length of the sleeves because I don't really want to wear any long sleeve sweaters anymore. I'm too hot all the time. And the fact that it's a cardigan, so I can take it off and kind of throw it open if I want to. And I don't know if you guys saw these amazing pockets, but just look at that. You can like throw a ball of yarn in here and you can knit as you go. So it's really nice.
Fabulous. I worked with Anne, and we have 8 color combinations coming that will arrive in December, because that is Kumo and Helix or Felix, correct?
Exactly. Exactly.
So we have 8 color
Fantastic.
combinations coming. We ordered the colors and put them together, and they're on order. So that's
That's
fabulous.
exciting.
What else, Regina?
Yeah, we have some Paris-based questions. So a couple of our attendees are wondering where to go yarn shopping in Paris. We've got someone who's visiting next year.
Okay.
And another user wondering if, when in Paris, can a person visit your dyeing facility?
So places to shop in Paris, we have a stockist in Paris called Little Weasel. So it's Lil Weasel, like in English. It's a beautiful yarn shop that's in the Passage du Grand Cerf, and she sells a small collection of La Bien Aimée there. She is a full-fledged yarn shop and fabric shop. So if you like to sew as well, she's got really beautiful stuff. You can also find one color at a yarn shop called Les Tricoteurs Volants. So this is called the Flying Knitter. So we have a colorway called the Flying Knitter, which is a purple colorway. When you go to his shop, you understand why this color is called the Flying Knitter. His shop is purple. Everything is purple inside. You walk in, the shelves are purple, the front of the shop is purple, and he always wears purple. The owner's name is Enrico, and he's really, really lovely. He's Italian, and you can go and buy this one color, the Flying Knitter, across many bases inside of his shop. So it's worth the trek there. He has a very, very adorable, cute shop. He does sell other yarns there too. And Enrico is just very delightful.
Great.
So the question about coming to visit my studio. During the pandemic, we moved to a new studio, which is our forever home. And unfortunately, the building that we moved to is not zoned for the public. It is a professional kind of atelier building. So everyone working in here are artisans. And we are not allowed to have the public coming in and kind of milling around our hallways to visit. So unfortunately, we're not able to accommodate any visits to the studio.
Well,
I'm really, really sorry.
We get to come in right like this. So
Exactly. So we can do virtual events. We often do virtual events just like this. We also are going to start a new series called Come Visit Aimee's Closet. I've just moved to a new office space where we've set up this like actual space where I've got an actual closet set up. It's pretty big with all of our samples that have been knit in LBA since 2015. So it could be a great opportunity for us maybe to do another virtual event later, and you can come visit my closet.
Sounds fabulous. Anything else, Regina?
Oh, yes, we do. Do you plan to create any more Miyazaki-inspired colorways?
Yes, and I already have one ready to go that's going to be released in spring 2024. So we're talking about March, end of March, early April. We're going to be hosting a pop-up shop here in Paris, and we're planning on debuting that colorway during our pop-up. So get ready. At the end of March, we'll have a brand new color coming out. It's a very spring-like colorway, and that's all I'm going to give you as a hint.
Okay, fair.
Wonderful. And we've got one more question right now. This is from Lori Hampton. What is the turnaround time from meeting with your yarn manufacturer to the dyeing to when it hits retail?
This is such a great question because I just launched a recent collaboration with Brooklyn Tweed for Imbue. So Brooklyn Tweed makes a base called Imbue, and now we dye on Imbue undyed. I want to say the turnaround time between the time that I was able to get the yarn, dye it, and be able to commercialize it, it took me a year. But that was because I was coordinating with Brooklyn Tweed to get the base, and it actually went a lot faster than it would normally because the base already existed. All they needed to do was spin it uncut with no color on it, so undyed, so that it'll arrive to me, and then I did my test dyeing on it. So we were able to dye colors like, let's pull up some of these like fun examples of different ones here. So we were able to do like Fleur Morganite, like one of our most popular colorways. We were able to dye some of these speckled colorways here. This is Confetti Cake. light semi-solids. We just recently did an event with Brooklyn Tweed, so you can look on both of our social medias to see the color ring. We really chose colors that complemented the colors that Brooklyn Tweed puts out. Their colors are more inspired by nature. So those are by nature darker colors. And so we went towards light. And so we have lighter and brighter colors, a little bit of variegated and a little bit of speckled. The color development for Imbue took about 6 months. 6 months, and I wasn't working very quickly because at the same time I was working on neons and neutrals. I was also working on some other projects and some other bases being released. And I want to say that's fast for me for releasing a yarn. If we come back to a base that we've spun just for us, so like I want to say like Corey worsted. But that again is very special too, because I was spinning Corey worsted during a pandemic. So everything was always going a lot slower during the pandemic. There were a lot of supply issues and things like that. I want to say Corey worsted took me almost 2 years to work on, from the beginning that I started having the base spun to having it dyed. In the meantime, I decided to make a book around it, and that's how Worsted Book came to be. And then we released the yarn. Wensley Worsted came a little faster because I already had the specs. I just copied the version of Corey worsted. So like the same twist, the same weight, I just changed the fiber. So I think that we are able to get Wensley worsted out into the public probably in about 9 months after Corey worsted came to be. So I would say it takes anywhere from a year to 2 years. That's kind of why, like right now, it feels like Bien Aimée has a lot of bases coming out, because I've been working really hard over the last 3 years to have all these bases coming out. A new base like that we just released called Volute. So this is our cashmere wool base. This one took quite a long time to develop because I make this in South America. So already there's the distance that we have to work with for delivery of the goods. And also the mill that we work with is very popular. I'm not their only client. And so I had to wait my turn to have my yarn spun. So I waited very patiently, but I think that for Volute, we worked on it a good 18 months before we actually got the first samples in-house.
Wow.
And then we started dyeing it. Yeah. Yeah.
So that is what you were holding up. I know you have a stack of, and what somebody asked the question, what am I wearing? So I'll let you tell about this fabulous pattern. And I think you've got some samples to show.
I do. Let me start with this one, because this one a lot of people recognize because they see it around on social media. This is my pattern called Le Bandana. And I released this back in June. Is that right, Julia? Mm-hmm. Yeah, in June. It's a recipe. So this version here that you see, this is the basic intarsia, is going to come out on Friday. But the actual shape and the format of this is called Le Bandana. And I released this pattern in June because I wear a lot of bandanas. If you know me in real life, you see me riding around on my bicycle, and I always put on a little bandana. You know, I was a Girl Scout, and I absolutely loved wearing my bandana when I was in a Girl Scouts. I loved putting that little thing on, and I thought it was the cutest thing ever. And so I always wore bandanas. And this was something that my mom would knit us too. She would knit us all like little bandanas, and we just have like a little scarf around our neck. So it's just a perfect amount of coverage in the back. And when, you know, you can just imagine me riding around on my bike with my with my bandana. And so once I made the shape, I just started knitting nonstop this shape and just putting lots and lots of different knit techniques into it. So the first one I did was just solid. And then I did this one where I put in some just basic intarsia shapes. So this one's going to be called Basic Intarsia. And then after that, I got really adventurous and was like, let's just go crazy with the intarsia. And so we did All Over Intarsia. So this one's going to be called All Over Intarsia when it comes out. And then I went back and simplified it a little bit and decided to make one with big stripes because I love stripes. And this is a jumbo version of the bandana. So this is honestly, this pattern, you can customize it in any way you want. It starts from the point and you're going to knit up, and then you can come to a point where you say like, this is deep enough for me. And then you just decrease back. It's a really great way to stash bust those single skeins that you have in your stash. Just knit to like 50 grams or like half of the skein and then start decreasing back. And then you can use the entire skein of yarn.
Fabulous. We did a workshop. We had a workshop on it, and we had folks doing the band. This is my sample that I worked on with the class, teaching the intarsia technique. So it's a fabulous way. Intarsia is one of those intimidating knit events, and so it's a great way to practice that. And it sounds like we're going to have another class
Oh,
because
I love that.
great patterns, Aimee.
Can I
Fabulous.
show you my most recent one that I made while I was traveling around in Asia?
Absolutely. I saw a picture of it I think I saw a tease of it.
So I started this one when I got on the plane to fly to Tokyo. So I cast on with floor morganite. And I knew that I wanted to use this yellow. So this is a new yellow called Sunburst. And I wanted to really play with texture, but keeping it very basic intarsia. So this is Kumo held double, along with our new base Alix, which is going to be coming out very soon, held double. Alix is joining the family of new yarns with Helix and Felix. And so it's all the same weight, except that this one's spun with Surrey alpaca and merino. So it's very soft. So as I was flying over towards Tokyo, this is pretty much my 14-hour flight right here. In the middle, I like went to sleep, woke up. I arrived in Japan, had jet lag, so I didn't knit for a couple of days. And then I traveled by train to Nagoya. And when I was traveling towards Nagoya, you can see the mountains in the background. So I started like doing my version of the mountains kind of showing up here. And we got to a city called Nara, and I went to a festival for fall, and there was a full moon. It was like the biggest full moon that I've ever seen in my life, and it was very low in the sky. And so this is the full moon right here with the mountains in the background. And I kept knitting and I kept knitting and getting inspired. So you can see more of the mountains that are happening here. I traveled back from Nara back to Tokyo, and I needed to do some work. So I was working with my team. So the knitting right here is quite relaxed. And I would say like kind of boring intarsia. It's just very, very easy. And I was working every day and knitting on this in my downtime. And then on my very last day in Tokyo, I decided to go visit the David Hockney exhibit in Tokyo. And he's an artist that I have always admired, and I love his use of color. And in his exhibition, he used all of these like incredible colors where I was like, oh my gosh, that's my color, Lush, LBA yellow. And I kept seeing all these colors that I had already dyed myself. And so between flying back from Seoul, Korea to New York, I had about 36 hours in Paris. My assistants wound me skeins of all these colors. I sent them a list and said, I need all these colors. And so while I was in New York for Rhinebeck, I knit this part for the last week that I was there. And this was just to represent my last day in Tokyo.
That's like a scrapbook of your trip, Aimee.
Yeah, it's somebody said it's like a travel journal of my trip to Asia. And so I will chart this, and we will put this online as well to share with you. So if you would like to give it a go, it's really fun. It's very easy intarsia, honestly. Even this part too, where it looks confusing, it really isn't. It's really, really fun. I just tell people intarsia is just stockinette. It really is. It's just knits and purls, and there's no floats to deal with. Look, this is the wrong side.
And it looks artistic on the backside as well.
Yeah, I love how this really works because you can make it reversible. And yeah.
So speaking of designs, that was one of our questions is, do you design your own patterns? Do you work with designers? I know you've got some samples in the back, and how do you decide on designs? And you've written 2 books as well.
So the 2 books that I've written are collaborative books where I have actually curated working with designers to make designs for the book. I do design, actually. I just kind of knit for myself, kind of very much like my mother did. My mother never really followed any knit recipes or patterns. She just kind of made it her way. I remember being a teenager, not even a young adult, and Abercrombie and Fitch had just arrived to Kansas, and we were like, what is this shop? It's a big deal. So we went to go check it out, and I immediately was like, I put off like everything was so expensive. And my mom would look at the sweaters and she's like, I can knit this. Yeah, I remember. Don't you do this as a knitter? I do it too right now. I'll walk up to a sweater and look at it and be like, I can knit this. And I go, Mom, I love that sweater. I would love to have that, but I didn't want to pay the price. I went back to college, came home 2 weeks later, and my mom had knit the sweater with the set-in sleeves, with the shaping, with the bell sleeves that they had. And I was like, Mom, how did you remember this? And she's just like, I remembered from my mind. She just like took these, like, because back then there was no cell phones. No one was taking pictures of anything. And she just remembered from her mind. And I still have the sweater. And funny thing is, I remember I don't know, I think I just graduated from university and I found that same sweater in a thrift shop in my university and I bought it for $2. And I was like, so I have the original and I have the one that my mom made. And I was just like, it's exactly the same. And I'm kind of like that with my knitting now. I will be able to knit myself a sweater, but I just haven't necessarily written down the pattern. I'm still trying to figure out my voice as a designer. And so I was practicing with Le Bandana by putting out a basic recipe. I think the kind of designs that I want to make is I want to make a design that's accessible to many people. So like if you like to knit basics and keep it very simple, there'll be the basic version. If you feel like you want to be adventurous and take it towards colors, there might be the basic intarsia version. Then I love knitting color work, so maybe I'll make a color work version, but always the same pattern. So you're going to see through Le Bandana, I'm going to be releasing all these different versions of Le Bandana. I'd love to make a vest. I already have the shape of the vest ready to go. I already have another sweater pattern that I've already developed. So I just now need to plug in all the different versions to release it. And yeah, I'm just feeling like right now at this time, I'm not ready to be a designer. There's a lot of responsibility for being a designer, and I have a lot of responsibilities in my life right now, managing my business, taking care of my children. I feel like I closed my shops so that I could spend more time with my kids. And I feel like if I added another thing like being a designer, that would take away from that time. So I think at least for the next 5 years, you probably won't see very many designs from me other than maybe Lil Bandana. But it's in my mind. It's in my mind.
So who are who have been your inspirational, um, role models, people that have inspired you in your journey through the fiber world?
Well, I want to say Nancy Marchant has been an immense influence on me. I really got to know her and work with her very closely in the worsted book. She made the canal poncho. Through that collaboration, we just became very close friends, and she's just a wealth of information. I honestly have any questions about knitting, I just write to Nancy and ask her. I mean, I'm really proud to say that she's a very close friend of mine. Other inspirations would be like Sylvia Watts Cherry. I love what she's doing with intarsia and color. Nora Gone. I'm very inspired by Jared Flood from Brooklyn Tweed, hence the collaboration that we've done with Imbue. I'm very lucky to be in a place in my career where, like, if someone inspires me, I reach out to them and I tell them, and I say, hey, can we work together? Andrea Mowry is somebody that I admire. I feel like she's really got a pulse on what is modern knitting and what is wearable and fun to knit as well. Obviously Stephen West. I mean, Stephen and color, and also the proximity of us being in Europe. He's from the Midwest. He's from Oklahoma. And so we are friends, and it's really nice to be able to talk about color with him and see what he's doing. He's always inspiring me.
Oh, always inspiring. He was kind of first on the scene with color, wasn't he? And
Oh
now
yeah.
we're all ready to wear something bright. And we Midwest folks, we are connected. No doubt. How do you juggle all of? I know I've watched your Instagram, so make sure to follow Aimee on Instagram as well. And I've been following your travels, so you can kind of see what's happening and where you're going. How do you balance all of that with? I mean, you mentioned wanting to take care of family and that, and how do you keep that balance? I think that's a job for
Well,
all.
I'm very organized in my work. And I'm a planner when it comes to events and working, but there is a time, like if you came to my house is a huge mess. It's my place of comfort and relaxation. Both my husband and I both agree that this is like our space. And so my house can be very haphazardly, very messy. Like right now, there's a huge stack of laundry sitting in my living room because it is what it is. I juggle a lot because I have a lot of people supporting me. I am not a one-woman show here at Bien Aimée. We have a very big team here working. Just my team alone, which I call the A team, there's 3 women that work with me on this team that help me do everything that I do. Coordinating yarn support, coordinating my events, just helping me coordinate my calendar, and things like that, and keeping me on schedule. Other than that, I have my sales team, and then I have my dye team and my pre and post production teams. And I am extremely lucky to be working with my husband. He is my business partner. So we work together during the day, and we actually don't see each other at all at work, which is good because he does other things than I do. And then we come home at night and we don't talk about work. That's one of the rules that we have, is that we don't talk about work. And that was one of the reasons why we closed the cafe and closed the brick and mortar, because it was encroaching in our personal life. And so we decided it was fine while my kids were growing up, but now they're 13 and 16. I feel like these ages are super important for mom and dad to be around and present. And so we decided to close our shops, be with them until they go off to college and, start their lives. And then maybe I will look into having a shop. But I like the freedom of not having the shop, because if I had a shop, I wouldn't be able to travel to your shop or travel to the other shops that I've been able to around the world. So I think we found the right balance of how to make everything work. And yeah, it's good.
Well, we're thankful. We're really, really thankful that because you've done that, then we can have your yarns right here in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I think, that's what's really exciting, is that when we're done, you can stop on by. I've even had people, we've been on events and they're driving by and they'll swing in. So when we're done here shortly, you'll be able to pop on in and grab some Bien Aimée right now. It's I'm looking at it. It's almost half the wall over here. I think, Regina, do we have any more questions? I know you've been asking for our fashion show, and any questions we need to address?
Yeah, we do have another question. How much time do you spend each year traveling to promote your yarn?
So this year has been the biggest year for travel. Honestly, I didn't really travel. I think before the pandemic, I had traveled twice in the year to go and promote my yarn. Then the pandemic happened and there was no traveling happening. I worked on a book, worsted book. I couldn't promote this book very much. I don't think I traveled more than just a couple months. And that includes like these like maybe week-long trips. And so not very long. Neons and neutrals I knew would be a travel year, because it was finally the time when we were allowed to travel and allowed to see people. I have been traveling this year since January.
Oh.
So, and I literally just came home 10 days ago. And I would go away for maximum 5 weeks, come back for 4 weeks, and then leave again for 5 weeks, and then come home for 4 weeks. It was grueling. On paper, I was like, yeah, I can do this. But then like at the end, I was smart, because I knew that I needed to space out my events. So the events would happen on the weekends, and then I'd have the week off. And during that time, I would rest and I would work remotely. So in between those times, I was always working remotely, and things like that. Staying in touch with my kids. We are in the age of technology, and we definitely use it to talk. There's this app called Marco Polo that we really love to use. So no matter what time zone I was in, I could leave them little messages and they would wake up and I would have a message, and when I wake up in Tokyo and things like that. And it was really great way to stay in touch with teenagers who are already all the time on their phone like this. Then they would see a message from mom pop up, and it was great. It was great. So
Well, thank you for your travel and thank you for your commitment. And we can't wait to have you come come to Knit
I have to make this happen, because if I come to Lincoln, Nebraska, then I get to go to Omaha, Nebraska and visit my favorite cousin, which she'll probably come to your shop. She's in
Absolutely.
here too.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, she's not. You're only a quick 45 minutes, which is nothing, I'm sure.
Oh, that's nothing. That's something. We're gonna make this happen.
Hey, that's fabulous. Well, let's we got a little fashion show. I know folks have knit some things, and so we won't have time for we'll have time for you to wave and say hi. And Regina, I think maybe are you prepared to say their name and maybe what they're wearing? And let's see if they go off mute, then they would pop up on our screen, right? If they said hi, so that we could see them big. Is that correct?
Or they can raise their hand. Sometimes
Yeah.
if they raise their hand, they like move up to the front of the.
They do. All right, let's go back to gallery then.
That's
And
how we would do it.
yeah, let's go back to gallery. And Regina, do you have someone you want to call their name out, and we'll do a little show?
Yeah, we'll try our best here. I've got a list. So we have Anne Fry. Anne, can you raise your hand?
Yes.
Oh, good. Anne's wearing the Tawanda pattern from our Mother's Day knit along, and Blue Royal and Fujimoto.
I love it. Those two colors go together so well.
Beautiful.
Great. And then Kelly, can you raise your hand? There's Kelly. She's wearing a Jennifer Steingast sweater made with Corey Worsted.
Wow. Can I guess the colors? Is it Flora Morganite? Looks like it. And I can't see the color for the yoke, but looks great. Neons and neutrals.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right. And how about Kay?
Okay.
Kay is wearing Wavelength by Georgia Farrell with Felix and Winterfell.
Where's Kay?
There she is.
Where's Kay? I don't see Kay.
Hey, raise your hand.
There she is. Okay, there she is. She's
Oh,
waving.
yeah.
There we go.
Hi.
Perfect. And Ball. Anne, you can raise your hand. There she is.
Hey. Hi.
Anne's wearing a hipster light in vintage Grello.
Nice. I love that shawl. Awesome. Awesome.
Two.
And how about Leanne Gruber? We see Leanne. Can you wave?
Hi there. It's Luann.
Oh,
Hi,
Luann.
Luann.
It's
I know what
the
she's wearing.
Stephen dotted rays.
Oh my God, I love this
Boucle.
pattern so much. I have it
Yeah.
memorized.
I finished it just in time.
What color was that again? That was
I think it's La Nuage or something like
It's
that.
Le Grand Nuage. It looks
Oh,
amazing.
Sounds a lot better when you say it.
And Valerie, where are you, Valerie? Oh, there she is. Valerie's wearing La Bandana in Felix.
what are your colors
Nice.
now?
Excuse me,
Your colors. I'll
my
put you-
colors. Well, I know a high garden is one, but the other one is the medium green in Felix, but I can't remember the name.
It's hard
do
for
you
me to see
remember?
because we're in speaker mode and your screen is so small. Is it Hegelia? It's a made-up word.
It is.
I believe it's Hegelia, and it looks
Yes,
amazing. I
You're
love
correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. What can we do to get? I've got you in gallery. Do we want to go to something different?
Oh no, it's fine. I mean, if you put her in speaker mode, then she pops up.
Well, let's try that, and then let's do that so we can see you a little bigger. And then if we go to speaker mode, you can take, if we call your name, take your microphone off, and that'll help you pop up. So Regina.
Perfect. We can try this with Deanna. Deanna.
Hello. You see me?
Yeah, I do. You're right in the
Okay.
center of my screen.
Deanna, what are you wearing?
It's the Sophie shawl in Felix and mohair.
So gorgeous. Wow, I love it.
We
I
have
love
made,
pink. I love your pinks.
We
We
made
be friends. I love pink too. It's like my favorite color. I always want to knit things in pink and yellow.
we have made so many a petite knits Sophie shawls with holding Felix and mohair.
Wow.
That simple, what we're talking about, you were talking about that simple pattern design. So you might want to plug into that because we have had so many people and it's so wearable. It's a little bigger than the bandana, but one skein and it works beautifully. Fabulous. So
Little bandana was kind of my response to the Sophie scarf because I was knitting the Sophie scarf. I think I knit like 4 of them. And the one thing that I found that when I wear the Sophie scarf is like the back of my neck, just the top was always exposed when I was riding my bicycle. So that's why I like the bandana because then I have the triangle just covering this part of my neck, which I didn't know was quite fragile. And it gets cold and then my neck gets like a crick in it and then I don't like it. And so then I made the bandana because I was wearing bandanas all the time. I think I probably own like 50 woven bandanas that I just wear all the time and throw with my outfit. So I was like, maybe I can make a knitted version.
Good.
And so that's how little bandana came to be.
Okay, Regina.
Awesome. Let's see. Donna, if you want to come off mute so we can see you. She's wearing a Stephen West Aurora cabin shawl.
And Regina, say the next person's name.
Yeah,
What-
so I've got, can you see me okay?
Yeah.
I've got the Aurora cabin shawl and I've got it, the Flying Knitter is one of the colors I used, as well as orange, and I can't pronounce it, but it's Audacieux.
Audacieux.
Thank you.
It's audacious in English.
Oh, yeah, among some other colors. So
That's fantastic. And you also have the Flying Knitter. So now you get an idea of what my friend Enrico's yarn shop is going to be like when you go.
yeah. Yes, it's a beautiful color.
Amazing. Your shawl's amazing.
Thank you.
Couple more.
Couple more? Okay. Perfect. Looking for Tana Kinnaman. Tana's wearing a hipster light.
Let's say hi, Tana.
Hi. Yeah, I started this in the spring and I just finished it a couple weeks ago, finally, since it started getting cool again. I love this. I love the feel of your yarn.
Aw, I love that. I need to make a little version of like that. It's a nice thing to throw on your neck. It's nice.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, I know we have lots of fabulous projects, and Aimee, thank you for taking the end of your day to spend with us as we begin our day here in the Midwest. We're really, again, grateful for all you do for the fiber world. We're grateful for great colors and great yarns and more knowledge about your company and about you. And I think we talked at the beginning about just the importance of supporting each other, and we're all in this together. And
Yeah.
it just means a lot to me as a yarn store owner that you're willing to come and participate in this event for us and show us the face of Bien Aimée.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a while since I've been asked to do a virtual event. And so we're really thrilled when this request came in. So please don't hesitate to ask us again. I do want to let you know that this version of Little Bandana, so the basic Intarsia version, is going to be coming out this Friday at 4:00. We're going to be putting in our newsletter. It's going to be on Ravelry. So this could be a really fun way for anyone who's thinking about Intarsia to jump in and take a dive for it, because it's really, really fun and it's really easy and very accessible. And I believe you're going to be getting Helix in the shop.
That's correct.
So this is perfect. We use Helix held double or Felix held double or Alix. And apparently Kumo held double with Helix, Felix, or Alix works really well too. So
It does.
yeah.
And I have 2 Kumos right now. It's the tennis ball and the other bright neon.
Oh my gosh, I have a bandana here in tennis ball. Let me show before we come off. So this is a version that I made. This is even easier in Tarja. Like there's just a tiny bit. So this is tennis ball, and this is anemone, and this is our Sport Nouveau base. So just holding one strand of Sport Nouveau gives you a bandana this size. So
All
much
kinds of
fun.
possibility. All kinds of possibility. Aimee, thank you.
Welcome.